The African American Legends series highlights the accomplishments of blacks in areas as varied as politics, sports, aviation, business, literature, and religion. We will explore how African Americans who've been previously excluded because of segregation, racism, and lack of opportunity have succeeded. I'm your host, Dr. Roscoe Brown, Jr., and today I'm talking with Howie Evans, the sports editor of the famed New York Amsterdam News. Welcome to African American Legends today, Howie.
Not as famed as Dr. Roscoe Brown, Jr.
Well, we're going to talk about sports today. You're the sports editor. You're the voice, really, of the African American community in New York City in sports, because some of the major papers have sports writers and columnists, fellows like Bill Rhoden. But you are right in the community, and you talk about what the story is. So I'm going to start out by asking you, what do you think the most important story about African American athletes is today? Is it Serena Williams? Is it Marion Jones? Is it Tiger Woods? Is it Mike Tyson, or something else?
Boy, there are so many. You know, each and every one of those that you just mentioned, Serena, Tiger, is a story unto itself. But I think the most important story today is the Balco thing, because it appears that all of the headlines have targeted the African American athletes who supposedly are under investigation and who have allegedly been involved with enhancing, performance-enhancing drugs. Barry Bonds, Marion Jones, Tim Montgomery, Gary Sheffield, and so forth. And recently, Kelly White, the girl who I think they pressured into admitting, worked out some kind of deal, because she's never tested positive for drugs, and neither has Marion Jones, and neither did Tim Montgomery. This could have a tremendous impact if they indeed, pardon me, ban Marion Jones from competition. They need these major names to keep their investigation in the headlines. So this is a story that might even reach down onto the college campuses and so forth, because many of those people are now being trailed and so forth. So the impact of this investigation, which is now being led by the government, really, because
Bush put it in his State of the Union speech.
So it's a major issue, Roscoe, and I don't see how there's going to be wiggle room for a lot of these athletes, because now, no matter what happens, no matter what Marion Jones does, they're going to be tainted for the rest of their careers.
That's very interesting, because sports records, they've been throughout history, always challenged one way or another, that it was the wind or the equipment or whatever. And this country is really hungry for new records. They're hungry for a baseball record. For example, McGuire, when he broke the home run record, he admitted he uses steroids. And they then banned that particular kind of steroid. So the question is, there are two parts of it. Did these athletes, or do these athletes, actually use performance-enhancing substances? We know in some instances vitamins are performance-enhancing supplements. So in that sense, everybody in sports uses them. Are there certain ones that are more dangerous to health, improve performance more readily? Are they involved? Or is it just the training routine that makes them stronger? The world is really different, and we know a lot more about physiology and the way bodies develop, and people train much harder now. So what is behind this, other than just the desire purportedly to protect the athlete's health and to make sure that records are legitimate? Of course, the question is, what is a legitimate record? When they did the pole vault with the bamboo pole, that was one record. They do the pole vault with the aluminum pole or the plastic pole, that's another record. So what do you think about that? Because I know you're close to this and you are around the sports world very much.
Well, I have a kind of different take on all of this. Mm-hmm. Number one, we all know that in a major election year, that the politicians will do anything to get FaceTime and to touch upon the American public in a way that will embrace themselves when election time comes around. But when you get a guy like Senator John McCain, who first attacked boxing, the boxing industry, then he gets into the drugs and steroids and so forth. He comes from a state that is one of the lowest performing states in education, housing, aging, and everything. And this guy is like the equivalent of an ambulance chaser, you know, and they all of a sudden Congress calls a hearing. Now, when was the last time, and you have been involved in sports all of your life, whenever did Congress get involved in people taking pills and so forth? Now, my whole theory on this so-called performance-enhancing drugs is that they claim such a tremendous percentage of baseball players are using it. Well, if all these guys are using these drugs, then how come they're not hitting 60 and 50 and 70 home runs and so forth? Barry Bonds in particular, if you look at his record from the time he started with the Pittsburgh Pirates, the only year that he really exceeded 40, 50 home runs was the year that he just went crazy when he hit the 73 home runs. But he has averaged only, just like Hank Aaron, a steady and very consistent 40, 38 home runs a year. So if he was taking was he taking performance drugs when he hit 40 home runs with Pittsburgh? Was he taking performance-enhancing drugs when he hit 40 home runs with the Giants? So he claims he's never taken it. But my thing is, so what? Since when? Who made these drugs illegal, and why are they calling them drugs anyway? If everybody, for instance, in track, if everybody took these performance-enhancing drugs, would not the Maurice Greens and Marion Jones still be the fastest runners in the world? You know, given everybody is taking them.
Well, let me ask you a question. Suppose nobody took them. What do you think would happen to performance?
I think that through the training performances of these guys and the women, the physical conditions are better, the tracks are better, they know more about nutrition, they know more about their bodies, they know that they have to weightlift for endurance, which many of these athletes do, and especially in track and field. And a lot of people link weightlifting when they all of a sudden see a guy gain 10 or 15 pounds like Jason Giambi did. All of a sudden, he's taking some kind of a drug and all. And I just think that the American public really is tired of it, because they said that it would harm baseball. Baseball is setting record number of crowds across the baseball scope. So apparently the American public doesn't care.
But the fact is that back in the days when the Russians were using actual steroids, not chemically derived steroids, they did win the weightlifting championships and they did get tremendous bodies, and now they're finding out that many of them, over half of them, are coming down with life-threatening cancers. So the fact is steroids are dangerous under certain particular circumstances. So really the question is, what is the nuance here? Well, is it really true that there's an industry that tries to organize and produce drugs that will give a little inch, because there's not a lot of evidence that shows that the little bit of steroids that might be injected through these various performance enhancers really make a difference. And there's an argument about that. As a matter of fact, you can use in science what they call a placebo. It's a dummy pill. And many people think that some of the benefits from taking pills is really a placebo effect. Clearly, we don't want athletes to harm their health. So that's one issue. On the other hand, what about any effect on performance? What do you think is going to happen? Where do you think it's going to go?
Well, here's two things. You mentioned the steroids, and that was the big thing initially. And I think we all know that steroids taken in massive dosages can literally tear the body down. And we saw that Lyle Alzado, the football player, died just from steroid abuse. And there were a number of athletes who died just from steroid abuse. Well, the drug manufacturers found another way in what they started calling designer drugs that were safer, but getting the same sort of results and so forth. Now, the thing with Marion Jones and a lot of the athletes who have tested negative for years is that the East Germans were the ones who created this tremendously sophisticated system of strengthening their athletes with endurance and all of that. They were able to mask a lot of that with masking drugs. Now, what the East Germans are saying now is that there is evidence that Marion Jones has taken drugs to hide the so-called drugs that Balco insists that she has been taking and so forth.
By the way, for the public, Balco is a laboratory on the coast that has really been in the forefront of this because they had a whole business of providing drugs. They admit that they provided performance-enhancing substances. And the real question that's under discussion is whether the performance-enhancing substances are steroids and harmful to the health and give an unfair advantage.
Not just to athletes now. That, you know, they have a tremendous operation over there. So obviously, they're not selling them to babies coming out of cribs. They're selling, you know, obviously athletes are using them. Otherwise, they wouldn't stay in business. But at the same time, athletes, professional athletes for the most part, they are taking the biggest hit when so many millions of other people in the entertainment industry are using these same enhancing drugs.
Well, the public at large, they want to be stronger, healthier, live longer. And this is part of the American desire.
And they're all taking them. You go to these weight rooms and these health rooms.
They may be taking them, but the question that you have to ask is it right or is it healthy that they're taking them? And, you know, the medical profession is sort of split on this. Basically, up to a certain point, it's helpful. After a certain point, there's a breaking point. But let's flip over to talking about the Olympics that are coming up. As you probably know, I carried the Olympic torch outside of Yankee Stadium when it passed through New York City, and it was a really very, very thrilling experience. The principle of the Olympics, the torch continues from all of Mount Olympus and so on. So that was really a thrilling experience.
It's a once in a lifetime.
It really is, once in a lifetime. I've been to several Olympics, but as a spectator. Unfortunately, I've never a participant, but this was as close to being a participant as you could be. But now the Olympics are scheduled for Athens. They're coming up in August. People are scared to death about going to Athens because of terrorism. Then they have the drug scandals and so on. What do you think is going to happen in Athens?
You know what? I don't think that anything is going to happen in Athens. I think whatever is going to happen to people on the way to Athens. Because I don't think that these terrorists, they obviously are a step ahead of everybody else. They're a step ahead of every government in the world at this point, and they have the whole world frightened to death because of the sophistication of their operations and their cells around the world. They've infiltrated virtually every major country and village and hamlet in the world. They've infiltrated this country. We have no idea who is in this country. And that's because we've opened up our borders for this cheap labor to let people come in under the guise of jobs and so forth. So we don't know where they are. And for someone to think that they can stop a terrorist attack, they're crazy. The 9/11 thing, who in his right mind, even the President of the United States, would have ordered fighter planes to shoot down 4 commercial airplanes carrying American citizens?
That's a very, very good point. But again, I understand that only half of the tickets for the Athens Olympics are sold, and countries are going to extreme measures to protect their athletes and their citizens. My personal belief is that it will go on without incident. There may be a couple of things on the side, but I don't think that with all of this world protection, it's going to affect, the terrorists are going to affect the Olympics. What I am interested in is what effect it has on the performance. Because I understand the American athletes are going to stay on a ship, and there's a certain amount of anxiety.
I think the basketball players, I don't think everybody else stayed on that ship, are they?
I don't know. I really don't know. But it's really interesting that this is, in one way, catching the world's attention, but because of the antagonism to the United States foreign policy, there are many people who are very anxious about what's going to happen. I met the Greek ambassador, and they are really welcoming, and they are talking about the tradition of the Olympics, which is a positive. Many of us are going to watch it on television. Are you going to be covering it?
No. Michael Wilson, who was a student of mine, who was a PR guy when I was coaching at Merlin Eastern Shore, now heads up the public relations and communications for the U.S. Olympic Committee. And he had 3 months ago, 4 months ago at the All-Star game in Los Angeles, he had asked me, I didn't get your credential, et cetera, et cetera. I said, I haven't gone to the 2 past Olympics because I enjoy it more when I can see everything. When you go to the Olympic Games, you miss virtually everything,
unless you pick a
right,
particular
yeah,
sport.
You
right.
see, unless you're here, you're at the basketball. You're at the basketball gym for the better part of a day. You miss everything else. But I am of the opinion that you are, that nothing is going to happen there. And whatever these terrorists have done, they've done it already. If they've
scared people, they've kept the people from going.
they've done it already.
Yeah.
You know, their mission is accomplished because they have focused so much attention upon themselves, who nobody knows who they are, and all. But they have frightened the world. You know, and as you mentioned, you know, tickets are like, this is the first time in history where people can actually go and buy a good ticket to a premium event like basketball, swimming, and so forth. You know, I mean, when was the last time, you know, that happened?
Given the climate around the Olympics, there's a positive aspect. The Olympics bring people from all over the world, many people of color in many different sports. And in that sense, the brotherhood and sisterhood that comes out of the Olympics can really be positive. And a lot of this has to do with the way in which it's played in the media. How do you think the media are going to cover the Olympics?
I think the media is looking for the sensation. And based upon what happens here in New York City with the tabloids, they would like nothing better than to have a bomb go off someplace. Maybe not kill nobody, but to divert attention away from the athletes. So can you imagine how the tabloids around the country would be if someone found a bomb and detonated it and so forth? That would take the athletes off of the front pages, out of the sports pages and everything and all, because this system that living under this capitalistic system, which is based so much on economics that people really don't care about anything except making a profit and all.
But I think the citizens of the country are interested in sports. It's a major thing. It probably supplants religion as the relaxing activity of the public. There's some great stories in sports. There's the Olympic baseball. There's the basketball. There's the track and field. There's gymnastics. There's the swimming, and some of the newer sports. I'd say women wrestling. As a matter of fact, a black woman wrestler is one of the leaders in that. So I think those stories will attract a lot of attention. And I have to say, it's up to you folks in the sports industry, sports writing industry, to emphasize those stories, get the uniqueness of those stories, because as we were talking before the program, the black athlete really is the focus of athletics in this country, in almost every sport. Probably, perhaps the world, but certainly in this country. Now, with the Chinese having so many people, eventually the Chinese athletes will certainly rival the black and the African athletes in various sports, which they already are beginning to do. So what do you think is going to be the biggest sports story in the Olympics?
The biggest sports story in the Olympics will come out of track and field, and that will be who is not competing and who is competing.
Going back to what we were talking about earlier.
Exactly.
Very interesting point.
Because if our premier runners, field people don't compete, and there have been a number of field people who have been banned, but they don't have the name of a Marion Jones or Tim Montgomery. So nobody knows who they are. But this is going to be a major thing. Well, major in this way, in that if Marion Jones does not compete and somebody else wins, they'll say, well, she only won because Marion wasn't there,
right.
you know, and so forth. You know, so it's going to be a very interesting Olympiad, and it's going to be based on who is there. That's going to be the major story, and these guys are determined, the government and the USADA, they are determined to take total advantage of this newspaper coverage that completely knocks everything out when they put Barry Bonds at front and center, when they put Marion Jones front and center.
All right, to talk about, as we come to the close of today's program, to talk about two other sports and two premier African-American athletes, Serena and Tiger. Now, first of all, you've made it when you can call somebody's first name and everybody knows Serena Williams, the tennis player, and Tiger Woods, the golfer. Both of them are not winning as much as they used to. What do you attribute that to?
Well, first with Serena, and I love it because, and I'll tell you what, she's been injured and her sister Venus has been injured, but the very things that we as educators try to employ upon our students is to diversify yourself and so forth. So now the big cry has been, all the black kids don't go to school. So here's two girls that I'm taking 6 months off to go to college. And they act like they have committed a crime because now they're not playing in these little penny ante tournaments because they're the major draw and so forth.
What about Tiger?
Tiger is going through, I think, a tremendous slump. But we have to remember that even though he didn't win any majors last year, he won more tournaments than anybody, and he was, for the third year in a row, the golf player of the year. So he was #1. So I think Tiger is just going through a slump. I think he's going through a period in his life where he's finding other things to do with his life. Yeah, he's going to get a wife and so forth. So he's not 100% all there. You know, where golf was his total life. I don't think it's his total life anymore. You know, and Serena, she just beat Jennifer Capriati. I mean, she killed her 6-1, 6-1.
That's right. So tell me, you write sports for the Amsterdam News. This is your passion. You're a sports person. As we come to the close of the program, what message would you like to say to young African Americans who like to become involved in writing sports?
I would say to them, first of all, to read. To read everything that you can. Magazines, books, to watch shows, and I don't mean the games. I mean shows like this where people are dispensing information, and especially young people, because we have kids 21, 22 years old who have no idea what Hank Aaron went through. We've had kids who didn't even know who Jackie Robinson was and so forth. So it's important that they read first. And then it's important that they dedicate themselves to writing about the experiences as it happens and not through the eyes of someone else, as a lot of young African Americans today tend to want. They all want to write at the New York Times or the big papers, and so they emulate these guys. And very often, it's not a good emulation.
Well, it's a good emulation that you are here on this program. We've come to the close of today's African American Legends. We are talking with Howie Evans, a sports writer of the New York Amsterdam News. Thanks for being with us today, Howie.
Thank you.